A lot of models are doubling down on development, and a lot of people need to prepare. What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, that's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. All right, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to talk to you about once again today. We have Tropical Storm Amanda and two areas of interest that are likely to develop in the coming future. We're also looking at our area in the Gulf region as well, and we're also paying attention to maybe a little bit of action going on over here off the coast of North Carolina. We're going to be going over all of this for you guys today, and let's just go ahead and dive right into it right here. Starting off, we have the National Hurricane Center, we have Tropical Storm Amanda, we have this area of interest over here, and we have this area of interest over here as well. And we have quite a bit to discuss with you guys right here. In terms of Amanda, it's remained relatively weak, around 40 miles per hour. It appears to me that its time for strengthening has passed due to it moving into cooler waters and starting to encounter some dry air in that region. So overall with that, I'm not necessarily too worried about, but it's these two other areas of interest that we need to definitely pay attention to in the East Pacific. We have our first area over here that is off the coast of Mexico a little bit, and we have this other area of interest off the coast of Nicaragua. We'll go ahead and start with this one first and work our way down. A trough of low pressure located well offshore of southwestern Mexico is producing a large area of disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Environmental conditions appear conducive for development of the system, and a tropical depression is likely to form during the next several days, while it moves slowly northward or north-northeastward near the coast of southern Mexico. Formation chance in the next 48 hours is relatively low at 20%, but in the next 7 days, it has dramatically increased to 80%. So that is definitely something that we're taking pretty seriously and definitely something we're paying attention to, especially with the close proximity to what's going on over here with this AOI that we've been tracking for the last few days. Let's go ahead and read this out. Another trough of low pressure offshore Central America is producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Environmental conditions appear conducive for development, and a tropical depression is likely to form during the next several days while moving slowly northward. It's not very big of a chance right now. It's only at 10% for the next 2 days, but it has a 70% chance of formation in the next 7 days. So we have a lot of action that's going on over here in this part of the Pacific, and it's definitely something that we're going to need to watch out for, especially as we start to pivot over towards our ensemble and operational models. Starting off with the ensembles, let's go ahead and go to the Eastern Pacific very quickly, and then we'll shift over to the Atlantic because there are some more areas that I do want to talk about with that. That's Amanda. We're not going to be paying too much attention to it. We are going to be paying attention to these two areas right here. At least according to the spaghetti plot, it's all one kind of big glossed area right here that I'm paying attention to for sure. And taking a quick gander at this, you're looking at these two areas of interest. This one over here developing off the Central American coast, and this one over here developing off the coast of Mexico and moving further up to the north. This is in the next 5 days right here. And looking at these ensembles, my goodness, at least for this area over here, it definitely has, not only is it close to land, but it definitely has some power associated with it as well. These are the kind of ensembles that I do pay attention to, the ensembles that have a lot of runs going and ensembles that have a lot of power running as well, including one 971 millibar ensemble that makes it to the Gulf of Tehuantepec over here. So that's definitely something we're going to need to take pretty seriously. These definitely do have a high ceiling in terms of tropical development for sure, because it's over 32 degrees Celsius waters at some point, which is almost 90 degrees Fahrenheit for those living in the United States. Also, we're paying attention to the fact that there's not going to be too much wind shear in this region, and the fact that the dry air is going to be rather minimal, and it's going to relatively be a good moisture pocket, mainly partly due to the gyre and partly due to some other convection that is going on in that part of the Pacific. So that's what we're paying attention to over here. Let's go ahead and move out to the next day or so. And as you can see, things definitely do kind of get a little interesting as we're definitely seeing more of these ensembles making landfall. Before we were seeing like maybe one or two, and then 3, 4, or 5, and now we're seeing how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. At least 10 of the 30 European ensembles have this system making landfall. And that is something that I am taking very seriously because this could potentially impact millions of people. Even if it makes a close brush to the coast, it's still going to impact people. And the fact that it's starting off moving from west to east is also very concerning to me because typically tropical cyclones move from east to from west to from east to west. They move in the westward direction. This AOI over here is not doing that. And what that's telling me is that we're looking at a potential recurve as soon as whatever pressure system moves out of the way and shifts further up to the north, which would increase the chance for landfall. That's something I'm paying attention to and something I am concerned about. Also, more long-term, going to 8 days out now, paying attention to this system over here as well, potentially impacting Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala over here. You're going to want to watch this, and this ensemble also has quite a bit of power associated with it too. It doesn't have as many as this area over here, but the ensembles that are developing, and the NHC's definitely been supporting this, have quite a bit of power associated. We were both seeing, in this instance, we're seeing both of these areas of interest. They have that power look to it, where it has a much higher ceiling in terms of intensity than you would say, at least in this time of the season. So it's definitely something we're watching for sure. And then as we go ahead and go to 10 days out right here, taking a quick gander, things definitely start to cool down a little bit. You have some of these ensembles doing a 180 and shifting further to the west. The rest of them either make landfall or make a close brush to land right here, and that is something that I absolutely do not want to see. But also, we need to pivot a little bit and talk about the Atlantic, because now that we're seeing all this happening, the European is also highlighting some ensembles going on in the Atlantic, particularly in the Gulf region as well as in the southwestern Atlantic basin. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this, and let's go ahead and discuss this. Zooming in on this right here, definitely seeing more signs of potential tropical development according to the European. The European operational yesterday was definitely showcasing a more intense forecast than kind of what you would originally expect from the GF. You would say that was more so a GFS run, but it looks like the European ensembles are starting to catch up quite a bit, and it looks like the operational is starting to adjust accordingly. How far out is this? Well, let's take a quick gander at this. Let's start 6 days out. 6 days out is when you would start to see the first sign of tropical development in this region. And this is according to the ensemble. We're going to be checking the conditions. We're going to be cross-checking everything as we go in, later into this video. But I do want to emphasize that very quickly. So that's what we have for right here. Not too much going on. As we start to go ahead and get a bit further out, let's go ahead and go to 8 days out. So this will be June 12th, so that will be next Friday. You do start to see some signs of development potentially in the Gulf, off the coast of Cuba, and in the Bahamas over here. This does appear to be more long-term at this current point in time, so it's definitely something that, yes, you should be watching. Yes, you should be taking a little bit more seriously, but for right now, it's just something to watch. It's more of a long-term threat, and right now, I want to see how the ensembles behave and how the operational catches up with that. Also want to cross-check with other models, because yes, the European is the most reliable, but it doesn't really do much good if the GFS or Icon or other models are not catching up on it too. And that's what we'll be looking over in a couple of minutes. So this is what we got for you guys 9 days out. You're definitely seeing, at least for right here, you're definitely seeing more ensembles popping up here and there. 993, 997, 996, 1000. You're definitely seeing quite a bit more ensembles starting to pick up by the time we get to the 13th. And then as we get towards mid-June, which is June 14th, definitely seeing more signs over there as well. What I'm thinking is going on right here is it appears to me that this is going to be some carryover effect, at least for parts of the from parts of the Eastern Pacific, and then moving through parts of the Gulf region as well. I think if the system does make landfall, at least in the Eastern Pacific at the Gulf of Tehuantepec, What's possible is a potential Gulf setup, and if the area of interest over here makes landfall in, say, El Salvador or Honduras, then maybe it rides off into the Caribbean, rides up the Yucatan Peninsula, and then gets its act together right here. So ultimately, what we might potentially see is a situation where all the big development that's going on in the East Pacific potentially carries over, moves through the Central American Isthmus, and crosses into the Atlantic, and that gives us our first named storm. That seems to be the kind of the most logical explanation as to why we're seeing all these ensembles popping up right here, because these are relatively bizarre tracks, at least for what's going on in the EPAC to shift over to here, and that's kind of your most logical explanation based on what I'm seeing. So with that being said, let's go ahead and look at the operational, and then we're going to go ahead and cross-check everything with this just to kind of see what's going on and what the conditions will be like. So here is our European. We're paying attention to this system over here as well. I've been keeping an eye on it as well. I've been talking to Logan Rounds, also known as Tropical Surge. He's thinking that that area close to North Carolina might be pulling a potential subtropical development situation, kind of like what I was highlighting in a few previous videos as well. We'll have to see how that pans out, but ultimately my main focus is the EPAC and in the Gulf and Caribbean for right now. This is going to definitely be something I will be watching for sure. So this is the situation that we got for you right here. Here's our first area of development starting in a few days off the coast of Central America, and then you see this other area develop pretty quickly. But this starts off relatively broad. This area off the coast of Costa Rica starts off pretty tight, so I find that kind of curious for sure. And then as the European starts to get its act together, you do see have the system kind of brazing the coast of Mexico right here before dissipating and weakening as such. And then you have this area right here. You have this potential tropical storm kind of stalling just off the coast of Nicaragua and Costa Rica, and then starting to make it a slow pass towards Honduras into the Caribbean Sea, as well as that system starts to potentially move into the Caribbean Sea. That's definitely an interesting setup that we're paying attention to, and it's definitely kind of corroborated with what the European ensembles have looked at. Now, going ahead, by the time we get to this point, we're at, 8 days out, so this is June 12th. So this is pretty much next Friday at this current point. And then by the time we get to the Gulf region, by the time we get to the Friday evening, next Friday evening rather, you do see the system doing its best to kind of develop a low-pressure system, but it remains relatively disorganized. There is some convection that does fire on it right here, and personally, I am a little skeptical of the track right here. I think if it does move and develop right here, it's going to kind of do a straight shot north, mainly because there's no high-pressure system that's going to be blocking this, and you have a low-pressure system over here. Like, take a look at this. This low-pressure system here in Kansas is going to kind of sort of act as a magnet as it shifts and moves further up to the north. And that's kind of how tropics work. They kind of get pulled away from high-pressure systems, and they get pulled towards low-pressure systems. So ultimately, what I'm noticing right here is you're seeing two low-pressure systems. I think it's going to be a possibility where this one pulls as it moves further up to the north towards Canada, and then this system starts to act behind it because there's no real high-pressure system. You might argue there's one over here in Kansas and Oklahoma, but that would kind of keep it further to the east as well. So that's definitely kind of an interesting tidbit and something interesting that I'm paying attention to. Kind of goes through a loop-de-loop and dissipates. That's your European at the 0Z for right now. Cross-checking this, let's go ahead and see what the GFS is going for. I know the GFS is not the most reliable, but I am cross-checking this to go, okay, the European is onto something. Is it a standalone, or are the other models starting to catch up with this? Let's take a quick look then, shall we? Let's see what the GFS is kind of cooking up. You're definitely seeing a situation where you have these two areas in the Eastern Pacific starting to get their act together. You have one big system that kind of hugs the coast right here, and then you have this other minor system that moves off the coast of Honduras and Nicaragua. I believe that's the other area of interest that the NHC has designated, and it does emerge off the Caribbean coast. It kind of does carry over into the Atlantic for sure, and then from there on out, it's a bit more uncertain as to what happens. The GFS is kind of being has a more of a messy setup, potentially having this heading towards Cuba and Florida, and then moving out to sea after that, although there is a possibility that this could potentially strengthen into a tropical storm and into at least at this current point in time. And at least according to the time frame, it definitely lines up to when the European is going for this potential area of tropical development. So that's kind of your situation. It kind of shifts off the coast of South Carolina, the Carolinas, and all of that before moving out to sea. So that is definitely an interesting setup for sure. At least the GFS is not necessarily being that unrealistic with this. And when you see the European and the GFS kind of at least initially agreeing on the same thing, that means, okay, we need to pay attention to this because they might be onto something. And yes, it might not necessarily develop in the Atlantic, but it's more so going to be carryover effect. But that doesn't mean that's not going to impact people. And that's definitely something that I am honing in on, and it's definitely something we're going to keep you updated on here at the Pat's Path Predictor channel. What is the Canadian run going for? Canadian run only goes about 10 days out, so we'll do our best to kind of pinpoint this for sure. Let's pinpoint this right here. Let's take a quick gander moving through right here as the system starts to kind of get its act together over here in the Eastern Pacific, makes landfall near the Gulf of Tehuantepec right here, and then it moves into parts of the Gulf region right here. I'm not exactly sure what it does afterward. Caribbean doesn't really, not the Caribbean, but the Canadian doesn't have too much going on at least 10 days out for that compared to the Euro and the GFS. And lastly, let's go ahead and take a look at the icon. Even though it only goes about 7.5 days out, we can at least see an indicator of, okay, how realistic is this, and is even the icon that is iconic for not getting things right to catch on to this? And let's go ahead and figure that out. Icon has two systems getting their act together. This one starts relatively broad. This one closes itself off, and then this one starts to potentially head towards land. This one kind of stalls off the coast of Nicaragua, slowly organizing and developing before strengthening and moving towards Central America. Kind of weakens and dissipates, though, and mainly stays in the Eastern Pacific, and although it does near the Gulf of Tehuantepec quite a bit for sure. So that's definitely an interesting tidbit and an interesting situation that we're paying attention to. So at least for right now, the Euro and the GFS are picking up on this carryover effect. The Canadian isn't showing much, and the icon is kind of lagging behind, and it also only goes 180 hours out. So it doesn't necessarily go too far to get a clear picture. But models are picking up on this, and they are starting to double down on this right here, and we're going to want to pay attention to this. Last thing we're going to go ahead and take a look at is conditions. I've already talked about the water temperatures. They're actually really heating up right now. So we'll go ahead and kind of take a quick gander at the wind shear and the dry air aspect using the trusty dusty European once again. So what are we looking at right here? Well, here's our wind shear starting 150 hours out. The wind shear of this system, of this whole situation, definitely is interesting to say the very least. I will say, based on what we're looking at least with the early returns, it looks like there is a bit of a break in the wind shear according to the European. Starting 7 days out, there's a break in the wind shear in parts of the southern Gulf of Mexico near the Bay of Campeche over here, or in the Caribbean, and it kind of starts to carry over a little bit more. There's a bit of a break that extends all the way to the Gulf Coast over here. And then as the situation starts to move through, you're noticing a bit of a jet that starts to kind of move up as the system starts to get its act together, which I do find kind of curious. And I'm wondering, okay, is this realistic or not? It does appear to me that for the time being, as long as that shear stays away from this area right here, this low pressure system, it's not necessarily going to be a worst case scenario, although there is a very, very narrow area that the wind shear pocket persists, although it does start to weaken and it does start to collapse in the long run. So it's definitely more of a wild card setup compared to what we've seen previously, and it does look like the shear is starting to support this. The question is, what is the dry air doing? Let's take a quick gander. Dry air is definitely interesting for sure. So the dry air, yes, there is some dry air that's currently in the western part of the Gulf over here when the system emerges off the coast of Honduras. But at least for where it is right now, there is a bit of a moisture pocket with this, and this is what I like to call mixable dry air for right now. It's something we're going to want to watch out for, definitely something to pay attention to as things start to get a bit more crazy in the Gulf if this starts to pan out, and we'll continue to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. Feel free to come join the Storms United Discord server. We have a lot of new stuff that's going on over there. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.